Games Workshop makes some of the best sci-fi models on the planet. And with tons of factions, each of them having a massive model range, trying to pick the best one from each faction is one of the most fun arguments in this hobby. So today I'm going to do exactly that. Every faction in 40k, my pick for the single best model they have, plus a few runner-ups where I couldn't quite commit to just one. These are just my opinions. You're going to disagree with some of them, so drop them in the comments because that's half the fun. So let's get into it. Starting with the big family, the Space Marines, and because each chapter has its own distinct identity and model range, I'm going to go kind of chapter by chapter. Now, to be honest, Space Marines aren't exactly my favorite model ranges. It feels too generic for me, but these are some of the best that I could come up with. So starting with the Black Templars, pretty straightforward. It's High Marshal Helbrecht, the leader of the entire Black Templar Crusade, and a model that absolutely looks the part. He projects authority and violence in an equal measure, and the detail on this one is exactly what you want from the Chapter Master. And the runner-up goes to the Emperor's Champion, one of the most iconic models in this whole Space Marine range, and honestly a conversation every time it hits the table. For the Blood Angels, it's their Chapter Master Dante. The golden armor, the death mask, the presence. He looks like someone who just been to war for a millennia and isn't done yet. Runner-up goes to Lamartis, the Guardian of the Lost. He's a Death Company chaplain who is brilliant for representing everything tragic and terrifying about the Black Rage. Also, he's a little weirdo with his ball gag, so for those with the kinky fetish, kinda relatable. Dark Angels, you already know if you've seen my top 10 models video, is Lionel Johnson. There's no runner-up needed. The Return Primarch for the Dark Angels is one of the finest character models Games Workshop has ever produced. I love the conviction in that pose. The squire holding the scabbard, and the sheer medieval just look of it. One of my favorite chapters, so he's my pick, and there's no contest. Deathwatch is an interesting one. My pick is the Corvus Blackstar, the dedicated Deathwatch gunship. And it's one of the coolest vehicle models in the entire Space Marine range. It's sleek, aggressive, purpose-built for hunting aliens. And runner-up goes to the Watchmaster. I have to give a special mention to this guy because he's running around with a Custody weapon. And as far as I know, he's the only model outside of the Custody range running one of those gun spears. Grey Knights, sadly, Grey Knights gives us only one option really, and that's Castellan Crow, the Brotherhood champion of the Grey Knights. That demon sword looks awesome and is so dangerous that it can't be destroyed, only contained. Crow carries it so no one else has to. That concept alone is incredible and the model delivers on it. It's dynamic, detailed, exactly what a Grey Knights hero should look like. However, Grey Knights do need a model range, so if G-Dub could do that, that'd be great. Give us more than one option at least. For the Imperial Fists, I might be getting his name wrong, but Darnath Lysander, the first captain of the Imperial Fists, and a model that looks immovable. He's got some Terminator armor, that Thunder Hammer, and the energy of a man who's personally held more fortifications than most armies have ever besieged. You could say the runner-up is Torgaradon, though I'll be honest, he's just Marnius Calgar with some yellow, so it's not very creative. So that's why I selected Lysander. For the Iron Hands, I picked Iron Father Pharos. The Iron Hands are the most machine-focused Space Marine chapter, seeing organic matter as weakness, and this guy embodies it completely. He's half man, he's half walking forge, all Iron Hand. The mechanical detail on this model is exceptional, and he looks exactly like what the Iron Hands believe a perfect warrior should be. Raven Guard gives us Ethan Shan, a relatively recent addition to the Raven Guard range, and one that immediately stands out. The Raven Guard aesthetic is all about speed, shadows, and precision, and Shan captures that beautifully. A model that looks like it's already behind you before you've noticed it move. Now for the Salamanders, I think this is the only tie on my list, but Adrax Agatone and Vulcan Histon, I can't separate them. Agatone is the current captain of the Third Company, and the model looks like how a Salamander should. Powerful, grounded, ready to take punishment and keep going. Histon is the Forge Father, keeper of the artifacts of Vulcan, and a spectacular character. If I had to pick one, it'd probably be Vulcan, but it's hard for me to separate the two. Logan Grimnar already made my top 10 models list, and I stand by it completely. The Great Wolf of Fenris surrounded by his wolves. That ancient axe, the pelt. He looks like every campaign he's ever fought is written somewhere on him. The runner-up goes to the Wolf Priest, the chaplain equivalent for the wolves. And he's one of the best looking support characters is in the Space Marines, if not in most ranges. Ultramarines, it has to be Rabute Gilliman, the Primarch, and arguably one of the most important living beings in the Imperium right now. The model is enormous, it's very detailed, and commands the table in a way that very few models in any range can match. Whether you love or hate the Ultramarines, and I know opinions are divided, the Gilliman model is one of the best they have. However, when you compare him to some of the newer Primarchs, he's kind of lacking. But I think Ultramarines get enough characters, so I don't know if we need to really update him just yet. Marnius just got a new update, so I think they're okay for a bit. And White Scars round out the chapters with Saboden Khan. The White Scars are the speed and cavalry chapter, and Khan delivers on the identity perfectly. He's got that dynamic pose, the aggressive energy, exactly the kind of model that makes you want to build a whole fast attack army around him. Moving on to the wider Imperium factions. The armies that fight for humanity but don't wear that iconic power armor. Septis Sororitas, the triumph of St. Catherine for the Sisters of Battle. And look, this is one of those models where I don't think there's much of an argument against it. Sisters of Battle, carrying a reliquary, holding the bones of St. Catherine herself through battle. Faith made physical in miniature form. It's a massive kit, incredibly detailed, and kind of a centerpiece that makes an entire army look more impressive just by being next to it. However, I gotta give the runner-up to the Immolator. A fantastic looking vehicle that perfectly captures the Sisters' aesthetic of faith and fire, and putting it on top of a chassis that's normally pretty bland, but makes this one really stand out. Custodes. And this is a brand new pick. That new Horus Heresy Shield Captain is one of the most impressive Custode models that they've released recently. It carries everything that makes Custodes visually spectacular. That golden armor, some ornate detail, the sheer physical presence of a warrior made by the Emperor himself. If you're building Custodes right now, this is a model that needs to be part of your army. Admech gives us Belisarius Cawl. He's one of the most significant non-Primarch characters in 40k right now. The man who created the Primaris Space Marines under Gilliman's direction over the course of 10,000 years. The model reflects that scale of ambition completely. He's enormous, complex, absolutely over-engineered in the best way possible. Perfect for the Admech energy. And if I'm honest, outside of him, there's not a lot of Admech units that I'm a big fan of. Astra Militarum, I guess, is another tie, but Commissar Yarrick and Lord Marshal Dreyer, you already know if you've seen my top 10 video, the man who earned the respect of the orcs by refusing to die, and that massive claw hand tells the whole story. Dreyer is a newer pick and brings in an incredible presence as a supreme commander of the Imperial Guard forces. Two completely different kinds of Imperial hero, both deserve the top spot. Agents of the Imperium, and my pick for them is Inquisitor Kotias. Of all the Inquisition models in the range, Kotias has the perfect combination of menace and grandeur that the Inquisition should project. He looks like someone who has condemned entire worlds to death and slept well afterwards. And that's exactly the energy you want from 40k's Secret Police. Imperial Knights, gotta go with the Knight Castellan, the largest and most heavily armed of the Knight variants, and a model that dominates any table it's placed on. Two massive volcano lances, a plasma decimator, and enough armor to shrug off most of what the opponent can throw at it. Knights are supposed to be imposing, and the Castellan delivers that. The centerpiece of the Knights army, and one of the most visually impressive models in the whole game. Okay, into the darkness now. Chaos. And this section has some of the coolest models in the entire game. Chaos Demons, it's absolutely Be'lakor, without question. Be'lakor even stopped my wife in her tracks as we were walking through the store. He's so impressive, and she has no idea anything about him or the game at the time. He's the first Demon Prince, the Shadow of Chaos itself, and a model that has gotten more impressive with its most recent update. Be'lakor is unique in that he serves all 4 Chaos Gods while being beholden to none of them. And that independence is written into every line of the model. Massive, menacing, and one of those models that makes opponents impressed every time he hits the table. Chaos Knights is the Knight Ruinator, the corrupted answer to the Imperial Knight range, and a model that captures Chaos Corruption at its most visually imposing. Where Imperial Knights are ornate and proud, the Ruinator looks like something that used to be a noble war machine and has been twisted into something that barely remembers what it was. It's fantastic for what it represents. Plus, special shout out to that left arm with that 3 drill weapon. Chaos Space Marines, I'm going with the Defiler. And I know it's a vehicle rather than a character. The Defiler is a corrupted battle tank that is partially demonified with spider-like legs and a face on the hull that screams everything about what happens when Chaos gets its hand on Imperial technology. It's grotesque in one of the best ways, and there's really nothing like it in the CSM range. It made my top 10 models list, and it belongs here too. Death Guard, for Death Guard, it's obviously Mortarion, the Demon Prince of Nurgle, and one of the best large models Games Workshop has ever produced. Those wings and that scythe, the sheer diseased enormity of them. Mortarion is a centerpiece model in its truest essence. The kind of thing that defines an entire army's identity just by being in it. This is a model I'm most excited to eventually paint. For Emperor's Children, it's Fulgrim. The Serpentine Demon Primarch of Slaanesh, with those 4 head options that make you feel progressively more uneasy. There is nothing subtle about Fulgrim, and there shouldn't be. He is excess and perfection twisted into something disturbing. A spectacular model that demands attention the moment it's on the table. For Iron Warriors, I went with the Lord Discordant on Hellstalker. The Iron Warriors are the Siege Masters of Chaos, the faction that broke the walls of the Imperial Palace during the Horus Heresy. And Lord Disco is a tech priest of chaos riding a demonically possessed spider mech that corrupts and breaks down machinery just by being near it. Everything about this concept is perfect for the Iron Warriors identity, and the model delivers. Red Corsairs give us Huron Blackheart, the leader of the Red Corsairs warband and the character with one of the most compelling renegade backstories in all of Chaos. He didn't follow the Chaos Gods out of devotion, he fell out of survival. The model reflects that renegade energy perfectly, battered, scarred, and still very much in charge. Thousand Sons get Magnus the Red, the Demon Primarch of the Thousand Sons, and the most powerful Psyker in the setting outside of the Emperor himself. One enormous eye, one enormous model, and a presence that absolutely dominates the table it's placed on. World Eaters. They get Angron, the most tragic and most terrifying of all the Demon Primarchs. A warrior who never wanted to lead, forced into it, driven to madness by butcher's nails implanted into his skull, and now an internal engine of destruction in service of Khorne. The model is enormous, brutal, and radiates violence in a way that no other Primarch model quite matches. If you want a model that tells you exactly what an army does before a single game is played, Angron is the answer for the World Eaters. And finally, Xenos. The aliens, the outsiders, and some of the most creative model designs GW's come up with. The Eldari for me is Incarn, the Eldari god of the dead given physical form. This model is unlike anything else in the Eldari range. It's swirling, dynamic, otherworldly in a way that feels alien rather than just ornate. The runner-up is Uraine, and I'll add her as a special mention for anyone who's got that personal preference that leans that direction. She's an exceptional model, and I completely understand the appreciation. She's got a dump truck, her feet out, and her cat's on display, so I understand if people lean that way. Now, for Drukhari, I'm going to go with the vehicles here. The Voidraven Bomber and the Ravager are both spectacular examples of that Drukhari aesthetic. They're sleek, predatory, designed to look like they cut through space rather than just fly through it. Everything about the Drukhari vehicle range is compelling. And then a very special mention to Lilith Hesperax, for those who have that particular appreciation for that kind of model. She's got her grippers out, so I know there's a few of you that definitely lean towards her. Genestealer cults? I gotta go with the Benefactus. And he's a relatively recent addition to the GSC range, and one that captures everything disturbing and compelling about that faction. Part human, part alien, all devoted to that four-armed emperor. The Benefactus has an unsettling presence, and then the sculpt leans into that hybrid aesthetic in a way that earlier GSC models didn't quite manage. So he's a great pick for a faction that deserves more attention than it gets. Leagues of Votann is Buri Agnerson. Already in my top 10 models list for a reason, and that still stands. Incorporating Tyranid Carapace into his armor as trophies is a design decision so clever and so specific that it felt personal when I first saw it. Two of my factions merged into one model. The Votann don't get enough credit for their range, and Buri is the best example of why they should. Necrons, in my main army, so they deserve a proper answer. And I gotta go with the Silent King, the last ruler of the Necron tier before the biotransference. The model is enormous. It's regal, and one of the finest large kits Games Workshop has ever produced. Runner-ups gotta go to the Nightbringer, my number one model in the whole game, as you know from my top 10, and the Void Dragon. And not the Golden Pony Boy, who definitely needs an update. He's looking really dated now that the other two Satan have their new kits. Orcs, I'm going with Ghazghkull Thraka, the Prophet of the Wa, and the biggest, meanest orc in the galaxy. That model's great. This enormous armored monster with the presence that makes every other model on the table look smaller by comparison. Ghazghkull is to the orcs what Gilliman is to the Space Marines, except louder with a much bigger gun. Runner-up is the Kill Rig, an awesome, unique model that blends the Beastnag aesthetic with the proper orc big vehicle energy. With the Tau Empire, I'm going with Commander Farsight. Farsight is compelling because he's the Tau that asks questions nobody else was allowed to ask. The model reflects the independence. He's dynamic, aggressive, more personally heroic than most Tau characters who tend to be surrounded by their suits and drones. A standout pick for a faction with a lot of good options. And Tyranids close us out with the Norn Emissary. Already in my top 10 list, already covered extensively in my Tyranid faction focus. My complicated relationship with the faction is well documented on this channel, but none of that changes how spectacular the Emissary model is. Towering, predatory, exactly the kind of centerpiece model that makes Tyranids feel like a galaxy-consuming threat the lore promises. The image of the Norn facing down on Buri Agnerson is still one of the best pieces of art I've ever seen. And that's it. That's every faction in 40k. My pick for the best model in each one. 40-something entries, a handful of ties, a couple of vehicle picks, and a few special mentions just tossed in just in case. Now, it's your turn. Tell me where I got it right. Tell me where I got it completely wrong. Tell me what model I should have picked instead. I want to hear about it. If you haven't already, I've got a full faction series covering every army in the game on this channel. I'll put the link in the description. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.